Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
I think the beauty, though, of being an art director versus a boss is like an art director comes from a background that has understanding and has studied art in a way where I may not be an expert on audio, but I understand the composition of art, the contrast and the lighting, and I understand elements that make art great.
Hey everybody, it's Scott. It's Wednesday and it's a Pitchwerks podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Mark Ramdarass has joined me here in the studio, and God knows how I pulled that off because he's actually a pretty accomplished art director, and this is a show I've been waiting to do with you for some time. Mark is very sharp. He's worked with some major brands that you've heard of, that you probably use all of them. But I want to pick his brain and find out about art direction and just that whole world. It's fascinating to me. I think about what it takes just to conjure the creativity to do the writing and copy polish that I do. Mark is working with graphics and just so many more tools in his toolbox. I'm really going to enjoy this show, and I think you will too. All right, now in the studio, Mark Ramdarass. He's an art director. He's new to Pittsburgh, and he's going to tell me all kinds of things that I've wanted you to hear. Mark, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Scott.
All right, dude, I got to jump right in. We're going to do this, right? So I've been waiting to talk to like a legitimate art director because...
Hold on, let me call one really quick.
Oh, come on, man. Be nice to yourself. No, I mean, you've got some real credits. Like, you know, a career at Nike is something I think a lot of people want and not a lot of people accomplish, right? I mean... Absolutely. How'd you get there? Let's start there.
I fell into it. I started off actually...
No one believes that. I fell into it. They just liked my face.
Okay, I think we all want to be astronauts and firemen when we were kids.
Yes, right.
And then you grow up and then you're told like, oh, only one out of every billion people gets to do that. And so you kind of fall into other things that you might want to do. So after graduating school, I continued my career pursuit for design.
Yeah.
I was designing watches and working with third-party brands like Tokidoki, HBO's Entourage, and designing like a lot of cool stuff, industrial design, graphic design. And then opportunity came to also work a small role within a Nike retail store, believe it or not. And that was my foray to eventually be a designer.
They had a chance to see you up close and know that you were like, it's not as hard as coming in cold to the design department. They had you like in their orbit to start with.
I still have the portfolio, if I can call it that. It was a really sad little sketchbook. But
are you that guy who kicks on the guy who you used to be?
Oh yeah, of course. Screw that guy.
I think he's a nice guy. I'm betting on it.
I still have the book that I brought to interview for this retail job, even though I was a art guy.
Right.
And of course, it led to an opportunity to interview, and it had nothing to do with design, but I kept mentioning that, hey, I do like design. Yeah. And then an opportunity came to be like, I kind of like wished it into fruition, but I also kept telling people this is what I like to do, and I never stopped pursuing it.
That's awesome. You and I are not that similar, but I do think that we have one thing that is in common. And because people ask me for creative words, which I think is fairly difficult because when you do something over and over and over again, it gets harder to keep it fresh. It gets harder to do something interesting and not repeat yourself, right? I guarantee you've had this problem. Or at least I really am hoping that, or otherwise I'm going to look stupid. When you're talking about pictures and graphics and art, and here's the real problem of it, you still have to satisfy the client or the audience or the whoever it is that you answer to. It seems like there's a lot of moving parts to this machine. And it's one of the reasons why I never felt like I could do what you do. I'm going to unpack that a few different ways with real questions, but I at least wanted to set the stage for where my head is at. Mm-hmm. And it is indicative of the respect that I have for what you can do. So start with the first part, which is, do you ever wake up and just go like, today's not the day?
Every day, especially
Really?
when it's day 99 on the same project
Yeah.
or day 1 on working for a client who you don't know much about, but you were tasked with learning everything and being expert before you walk in the room. Like it happens all the
They
time.
want you to be a mind reader.
They want you to create symbols that they will get in a snap, but they've never seen before. Like I want you to draw a smiley face, but not a smiley face.
Right.
And you're like, okay, so now that I can't get the image of a smiley face on my head.
But when it's on command and you have to be able to summon that freshness and whatnot, I have to believe that you've got a few sort of like categories. Like there's a client who says, "Oh God, I know exactly what they say." Ready? I'll know it when I see it.
I knew what you were gonna say before the second syllable came out of your mouth.
Yep, they say it to me too. They go, "I don't know, I'll know it when I hear it." You probably have another one that says, "I want this same thing this other person did, but different enough that I don't get busted."
That's a big red flag. Even before you said the busted part, like if you want that thing, if that person's not dead or doesn't have someone who does his stuff styled, then you're talking to the wrong person. Like it takes a lot of self-respect to turn down clients or to tell a retention client like, hey, that's not what we're doing here, and it's not something we can do for you. It's a really, really difficult decision to make. And getting back to what you said earlier about like, how do you design something when someone already has an idea in the head of what they want? Like here's the problem with cliches is like the cliches work.
Yeah. It's the reason why everybody goes back to them is because people can fill in the blanks somewhat themselves.
And reinventing that cliche takes a very, very precise intersection of familiarity and novelty.
Right.
Hitting that is like hitting a target at 100 feet away. It's like sometimes you get used to it and you get good at it, but you could throw darts in the right direction. So you know it's going towards where it should be, but sometimes they land and sometimes you have to start from square one all over again.
Right. I'm really curious, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to pepper you with questions. I have so many, and like let the record reflect. I've never had an art director come through, so this is all for me right now. Like I'm sure the listeners are going to appreciate at least part of it, but most of this is for me. When you're working for a client, I guarantee that there are times when, because we have it in the startup universe too, where the end user client isn't represented. So in other words, you're talking to, and I'm going to set this up so everybody can follow my weird circular logic here, right? You're talking to Joe, and Joe is the official project manager for this, right? Joe is here to tell you about Jane. Jane did the meeting with Joe, and Joe's job is to talk to you because you're the designer. Jane has a whole army of end users out there that she's trying to satisfy. Mm-hmm. But you're only really trying to satisfy Joe. And on a great day, maybe Jane, but you never get to do the customer discovery or whatever. So you may actually have what the crowd wants.
You're bringing up some EP or some PTSD right now.
I'm sorry. I'm really, take a breath. Okay. We're going to do thumb and ring finger. Okay. We're going to set it out to the side like this. And this feels normal to you, huh?
Of course, the name will be never known. Though
right.
There's clients, and then I'll have Joe as our main accounts person, and we will be happy and turning anytime Joe says turn and jumping anytime Joe says jump. And then halfway through the project, or actually just after pre-production was greenlit, Joe gets replaced and was let go for reasons, and we wish him the best of luck. And then you're like, hey, now here's someone that is no. Then someone else comes in and you're like, hey, Joe 2, pre-production's over. You're already on set and you're filming or you're creating content and you have to change exactly what you want. And then it's a weird balance act. Like, do we design and do we create content that's appropriate for what Jane originally wanted and is more aligned with the brand? Or does Joe 2 now get to plant his flag and he's now put
his fingerprints on this thing?
Yeah, because it's his first project with It's
and there's a really good
messy.
chance that whatever you create here is going to last longer than people remember that it wasn't his, right? Like he's got his name on it, whether it was his original estimate, his original plan, his original project design. So if something's going to run out there for 5 years after today, do you really blame him to want to put his name on it? Right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's that end user customer that's way away from the art direction, way away from the center core where you're at actually doing the work.
That's the most important part of the formula, and
But they're the furthest away.
It's never taken with enough. No one never approaches it with enough care.
Yeah,
because you don't get to know what someone in Tennessee thought about the ad or something. You get to know what Adweek thought about it, or what BuzzFeed picked up, or what the most famous comedian on Twitter said at that time. So it's a weird. I living in New York and designing in there for a lot of time.
Yeah,
gave me this self-awareness that 90% of what we design for media is built for metropolises or specifically New York, but 99% of the country does not live in New York.
It's true.
And those are the consumers and those are the users. It was a very interesting time where I was able to work on projects because I grew up in Tennessee. They liked that, oh, you're like a real person. I had expertise and I lived in New York. You're the guy we need.
You know people who own cars.
You had a let's see, washer dryer in your house. What was that like?
Oh man, yeah. There's a whole bunch of things that are different when you think about it. Sounds like real talk when you say it was for Adweek or it was for BuzzFeed or a comedian. You've had those experiences?
They're based in reality.
Yes,
we can agree on.
You don't want to talk about that part. Got you. That's fine. I mean, I'm not trying to give you more of that PTSD that you took from my buffet earlier, but no, I mean. It is interesting when you think about what the inside baseball people think versus what the actual buyer, which is largely already figured out in terms of some type of focus groups and surveys and, did it actually positively impact sales or whatever the goal of the campaign was? Like this natural light thing, Natter Days. You've seen it? You know the one I mean.
Explain this one to me?
I've got to show you a picture. You won't believe it when you see it. And I'm not trying to get you to fire shots at, a member of the family or whatever.
I'm a very opinionated person, so I can be very vocal when we need to be. And
strawberry lemonade beer.
It's my job to. It's
let
my job
the
to
record reflect that he refuses to look at it, Your Honor.
That's an interesting combination of flavors there. That's natural.
Yeah, get a little bit closer for the pink flamingos.
Did you just randomly pull this up?
We've been talking about this now for a couple of weeks.
Who's we?
People that I know that are
fans
like me that are interested in these things, but not like you in the fact that they practice in this. Because again, from a branding perspective, from just understanding how to communicate with customers, this was one of the ones where all of the talking heads all over the internet went, "I'm sorry, what?" And I don't know. Maybe it's not aimed at me. Okay, no, it's definitely not aimed at me. I think we can go that far at a bare minimum.
One of the famous product stories come from Coca-Cola where they changed the formula, as we all may know.
New Coke, right?
Yep. And then they changed it back, and the whole marketing, low-key stories, they did it on purpose just to reinvent and reestablish themselves as
make people say that they liked it, right?
Yeah, and make people and let the fans who already loved it know that they're listening to them.
Right.
I think it's great for McDonald's. I saw the craziest thing. McDonald's made onion tater tots at one point or something. There's weird McDonald's products that have failed, and if nothing else, it got you in the door to try it. And then when they killed it, you're like, oh, thank God they brought back the Big Mac. Right. I just wanted my fries anyway.
Plan scarcity or whatever, right?
Yeah, you scare people enough to make them weary, and then you just bring them back in with the stuff that they love.
Are you familiar with Mexican Pepsi?
I am.
The idea that it's real sugar instead of corn syrup, right? Mm-hmm. I really can't help. My cynic hat goes all the way on when it comes to Mexican Pepsi, right? We're like, oh, I guess. And if you read back through the releases, the press releases, the things that they said about it, it feels like that new Coke thing that you just mentioned. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I guess we can bring some and make it available. It's sugar.
I don't know why we're talking about soda so much. There's an ad right now for vanilla
Yes, you
orange
do,
Coca-Cola.
because they spend copious amounts of money on advertising and art.
Because I'm getting paid by Coca-Cola. There's a Coca-Cola vanilla orange ad.
Yeah,
And
just
I'm
saw
like,
this. Yeah.
I'm like, that's too many things going on. Like, what's wrong with just like it's just I don't know. The ads is like this jingle that was like written in a moving car. I don't know. Like it was just not. It's not something. There's nothing magical about that ad. I don't know why I remember it, but it's just like it just disgusts me just thinking about it.
You ever get the feeling that eventually, and it may be upon us, that failure is the only thing we haven't tried, right? Like somebody's just going to go, you know what? In order to sell this, I'm going to do the biggest failure of a design, of a campaign, of a plan. And we're going to call it something stupid. We're going to call it like failure marketing, right? And just like, okay, everybody's going to laugh, but they'll at least be aware of the brand.
I think I feel Starburst nailed that back in the day. Starburst was one of the first companies, or their agency that worked on that campaign was one of the first that had like these weird, wild, like there's a leprechaun, then out of nowhere a unicorn came, and then like there's like
Taste the rainbow.
Yeah, and then now you have like Terry Crews like busting through walls, like selling Old Spice. Like I wouldn't say that is a failure, but that's like what's something we could do that just doesn't adhere to the rules of storytelling, let alone advertising. But ads and creativity and art is like it's funneled through what now is required on different platforms. When you make an ad, like show the label first 3 seconds and then end with the thing, and then always mention 6 times, and then, or if you don't, Facebook might just not think that it will work, and Facebook will deny that the metrics are approvable for the ad, kind of thing. Like, so
I'm not even sure I trust those numbers anymore on Facebook. Like, so Ellen Powell, who used to be the CEO of Reddit, and granted, she didn't have the longest tenure or the most tranquil, blew the lid off of internet marketing and advertising a little bit by telling one of Reddit's, and I think the internet at large, their dirty secrets, which was a mobile user who changes towers is counted twice as an impression.
That's not cool.
That is
because what mobile user isn't mobile?
You could make the argument, right, that they thought you were sitting in one place. But okay, so what do you think everybody that's on a Greyhound bus is doing?
Yeah.
Sleeping or on their phone. So they're a mobile user, right? And that's an entire industry devoted to basically putting people through cell tower coverage areas, right? So if I'm on Reddit, and again, I don't know about anything else. I'm just talking about her comments. If I'm on Reddit, and there's an ad served to me, and I'm 1.2.3.4, and I pass into the next one, and now I'm at .5, I just got counted as a second impression, and the advertiser got charged for a second impression. If they're doing by eyeballs as opposed to clicks, right?
Right.
So she said that, and everybody lost their minds.
I would too if I invested, especially in ad space on Reddit. And man, it's just I don't know how I feel about that. But
that's why I say I don't necessarily trust any of the numbers anymore, and per click looks better with every passing day. But back to art direction stuff. All right, I turn the reins over to you. You want to say what kind of music is playing. You want to say what kind of paper it gets printed on. You want to say all of those things. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's your baby. Anytime you pour your passion into something, you want to make sure that it's presented in the way that someone might experience it in an audible way, physically, or from 20 feet away visually.
Okay.
Think about walking into Disney World. Like when you hear the music, when you smell, they actually pump like smells into different areas.
Yeah.
The music, the sights, the feel, like trying to pull up that like 100-pound barbell that's like intentionally bent so it looks funny. So all those things absolutely matter. And I appreciate you introducing me as an art director. And when I meet other art directors or creatives, I like to say, oh, you're also a creative. And that opens up the possibility of them kind of distill down what exactly it is that they do, if not an expansion of that term. Art can be visual, as we know. It can be audio. And the music is probably one of the things that hits us from the greatest distance that not a lot of people think about. I feel the best, most successful art moves you emotionally. And what do we all do at weddings after a few drinks, or just when like we're moving, we're dancing? Like it's because the music is in us, and it's one of the strongest emotional advocates for getting us to feel a certain way. So if you hear the Rocky theme,
yeah, you feel it.
You're already in a kind of mood, and then you pair Rocky theme with a beer, and then it's like, oh, I'm associating this with that. Like, or you pair, I don't know, some like any song that we love is going to resonate and change our mood and appreciation of something in a different way.
You probably start off with one medium, right? Like I'm a graphic designer, or I'm a, I don't know, digital artist. I'm a digital painter. There's a lot of these things where like it's the initial focus that you had and you claim that as your place. But then you start working with other people in a group, right? You know, and you probably actually end up, if I were going to talk more like traditional, you know, like office titles, you become like a project manager.
For me, I went to school for graphic design. When I graduated, I want nothing to do with anything but graphic design. Like if I could design the best logo, if I could work for Jemayev Geismar, or if I could work at RGA, like those, I just want to design logos, the Shell, UPS, FedEx, that kind of stuff. That would be the best thing I could do as a graphic designer. As I grew older, like you get the chance to work with other people, like you said, some of them come from different disciplines, and you realize that we all have to start understanding how to manage each other. And similar to,
without necessarily having the classical training that goes into what that person's discipline is.
Right. I think the beauty though of being an art director versus let me just say a boss, is like an art director comes from a background that has understanding and has studied art in a way where I may not be an expert on audio, but I understand the composition of art, the contrast and the lighting, and I understand elements that make art great that can be applicable to music. Therefore, I may have a better opportunity to communicate with you and get what I need out of you than someone that just went to business school.
So we seem to be living in the age of sort of fractional services, right? Where people aren't putting on a full-time person for everything that they would use, right? So a lot of consulting, a lot of ad hoc, a lot of, you know, I've got a friend who's a fractional CFO. She'll come in and she'll actually be your CFO on a, like, you know, couple hours a week basis, right? An accountant, but really in charge. And it seems like that's kind of the direction you're starting to move in, right? Is people that can't necessarily justify a full-time art director, but they have something big coming out and they want to have, I don't know, 3 months of your time putting something huge together. Does that feel right?
Absolutely.
When you talk to people, it's always like the name drop, right? It's like you have to say Nike every time.
I would be remiss, yeah.
You're like, by the way, those shoes you're wearing, I know some people at that place, right? So the name drop is usually like a pretty popular one, right? You know, like that establishes me as being real, right? Where else did you work? You worked at?
Worked at VaynerMedia, worked for Nike. I've done freelance jobs for Adidas, Reebok, Michael Kors.
See, this is the kind of stuff now that tells me when I have that project, Mark has been trusted by some other people, right? The next bit is, does it feel like it matches the direction, right? Do you do portfolio stuff for that? Like, how is it that you tell people that like you're a fit for their project without having access to the data in advance?
It's a very delicate dance. Very delicate dance. The quick, short answer is, if I'm known for doing 100 different skills at an expert level, I only show them the 4 that are applicable for that job. Right. And then I say...
But there's a style question, isn't there? Where it's like a right fit by style. So in other words, like, let's take an example, right? Mm-hmm. I saw something that you did that had sort of a street art flavor to it, right? Now, maybe that's exactly what I need, but I don't know it. Let's make up a shoe company you didn't work for. Because you seem to have a couple. I don't know. For this one, I'm going to be New Balance.
All right.
I think that's the only one you didn't mention. So New Balance brings you in and is like, I don't know. Are our people really going to respond to this aesthetic as if it's the only thing you can do? See what I'm saying? Like, they see one thing you did and that becomes you in their mind. How do you rein that in and be like, no, I can change it. I can give you something that fits because I'm not I'm not like a painter. I'm not like a person who does the same style over and over again. That's the dance that feels like a lot of people tell you no when they should have said yes.
Yeah, I think it's important to make it clear upon hiring or having the conversation of potential that I'm an illustrator or I am a designer. I did not design this one thing and that's what I do, but I can illustrate in different styles or I can do different dances. I think I actually want to step back to a question you asked earlier about the whole, like, how do you even become an art director? And I think it's funny, like, I didn't realize it till I was an art director practicing professionally that some people go to school for art directing. Like, out of high school, you major in art directing. So your first job out of college is art, and just like, so it's so weird. And you mentioned how, like, someone can hire you for 3 months to be the CFO or art director of that project. And it's like, you are so detached from that company. How can you just come in and be like the person that says, like, no, Blue, move that thing there?
Are you crazy? This thing should have tiger stripes. Yeah.
So I think when someone wants to pass the responsibility onto a trusted source, they look for those people, and it usually works out for the best. But there are cases where,
well, there's fractionals that go 2 hours a week or 2 days a week too, right? It can work both ways. You could just work on one campaign, or you could stay immersed for a while and then work on something huge after you get to know it. You still think maybe it's too big of an ask?
I think it has to be an open conversation that someone has internally as well as with the team, because sure, the first day on the job, you don't know what the hell you're doing. And then the second day, you're just like,
some of us go much longer than that. Yes.
Sometimes it's an amazing, important thing to talk about when you're in the hot seat, but then no one ever talks about it afterwards. And then it's like, oh, this guy was like, well, we contracted him for 6 months. So
this is brutal. Why do we have to
figure that out? Yeah.
Can't we just buy him out? Right. Can't we just start over? And I've seen people do that. Do you ever work a gig where you delivered exactly what you were asked for? And they looked at it like that's not at all what they asked for.
That's exactly how I felt like all through school. I would say, like, professionally, it's exactly what we've all experienced, where you go in for a kiss and then you're like, oh, we're just hugging, or oh, we're just
that's never happened to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's exactly that. And sometimes it comes from a place where as a team of creatives, we feel we understand the brand and what the brief was. And you did not tell us what to do because you trusted us. And this is what we came to deliver. And it's what our team all believes in. And the client's like, we a long time ago decided not to go that direction. And therefore,
oh, that's a bad one.
Also,
a long time ago decided not to go that direction hurts real bad.
And this is based on our understanding, chatting through the brief. And it's also based on our history and knowledge of this and our personal experience with this brand. So it comes from a place that's authentic,
right?
Though it's just not well received. It's just
yeah. This is the part that always would scare me, right? Because again, I see the complexity of anything that is more than words as just that's too many levers for me to control. I am really nitpicky when it comes to spoken and written word. I know the nuance of a word. I know the connotation of a word, and I tend to see myself as being careful when it comes to actually crafting that bit. But you're talking about, okay, well, the colors, the drawing, the type of drawing, the style of drawing, the thickness of it, right? There's so many moving parts that I would never be done with that project. All right, here's where I want to end. If I'm the client, what goes into a well-written brief? How should I write for you so that you know what I want?
I believe it starts with specifically saying why they got the role and what it was that what they saw in their previous work that made them feel comfortable working with you.
Okay.
As well as just how much freedom you want them to have and how much you trust them.
That sounds like you would appreciate that if somebody just wrote that. Like, I don't know if I know you well enough yet.
I'm hearing that as the creative, or as
you're getting that from me. I'm the client.
I would love, because I'm like, all right, here's my chance to prove to you why you should fully trust everything I do.
But you also know how far off the leash to go, right? Mm-hmm. Or how much lead you're being given before they start to freak out.
And you're being trusted not to destroy their billion-dollar brand.
Yeah. All right. Mark Ramdarass, how can people get a hold of you?
I am best found on LinkedIn, and outside of LinkedIn, you can find me. Actually, this April, I'll be having a little art show at Social Status downtown.
That's really cool.
During the art crawl.
Well, let's spell it out for people. It's Mark, just like you're used to, M-A-R-K, Ramdarass, R-A-M-D-A-R-A-S-S. Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
Scott, thank you so much, dude.
All right, that's the end of the show. Thanks to Mark Ramdarass, R-A-M-D-A-R-A-S-S. Look him up on LinkedIn if you're interested in collaborating with a real-life major brand art director. Cool stuff going on there. Buzzy and I are going to make another episode of this fine program. Feel free to hit subscribe if you like getting cool stuff automatically. You'll get it every Wednesday morning before everybody else, and that seems like a good plan. Take care of yourselves in the meantime. We'll catch you then.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.